I'm really excited about this part. This is where I would normally apologize and say, I have to show you a lot of chairs. You don't want to see more chairs. You're sick of chairs. You're tired of me implying that chairs matter. Chairs don't matter. These chairs really don't matter. The exercise these chairs were performing, the quest these chairs were on, is so interesting. Imagine this. The goal is a single piece, one squirt of plastic into a mold, one operation, make a chair. No assembly, no finishing required, inexpensive and available to all. It's a noble pursuit. Every piece of furniture we have looked at all semester was difficult to make. Even the tonnet chair, cut down the tree, make the board, make the rods, steam the rods, bend them around. Lots and lots of parts, lots of work. When plastics arrived, the obvious ultimate promise that plastic could realize in making something with just one single manufacturing effort. The idea sounds very simple. The reality was a struggle. So we're going to look at that. One of the most satisfying narratives in the history of plastic to examine charts the entire development of our ability to harness plastic. It's the quest for the holy grail of plastic manufacturing, the one-piece chair. We call it a monoblock chair. One mold, one squirt, one chair. Also remember that chairs really test structure. They have to bear weight, they have to be durable. With plastic, you have to worry about shrinkage, wall thickness, reinforcing. Everything in plastics engineering is tested and developed in the pursuit of a chair. It's way more challenging than a video game remote. This is the first chair made from injection molded polyethylene. But, actually there are two buts. This chair has two buts. One, it's not a monoblock. It's not one piece. The seat is made and then the legs are made separately. In fact, it's one leg used 4 times, snapped in. So it uses a snap fit in a nice way, but it's not a monoblock. Also, it's child size, it's not adult size. So it doesn't really cross the finish line, but it's a really nice piece of engineering. The back is made of separate fins, so there's rigid structure in the overall molding, but there's flexibility as well. It's also designed so that it can be stacked, although why you want to buy your child enough chairs to make a tower out of them, I'm not sure. Joe Colombo's Universal chair is the first adult-sized chair made of injection molded plastic. It also has a butt. It's not a monoblock either. It's also the upper part and then 4 of the same legs snapped in. In this case, the snap fit is almost invisible. In these photos, you can't even see it. But there's a little horizontal band around the top of each of those legs. Colombo's drawings for these chairs are so lovely. He also proposed it could turn into a stool. You use the same upper part and just snap longer legs in. That was never put in production. I don't think the plastic would have been strong enough. But you can imagine the appeal of this, the volume that would be possible, the number of chairs you could pop out of the mold endlessly, one after the other. The picture on the right is a cartel promotional image for this chair, and it's a subtle narrative, right? The red chair, and it's a really engaging narrative. The red chair in the back is the star of the show, and behind it a wall of its friends. See how many chairs we can make? And then on the left, there's some hint at how quick it is to make. It's coming out of the mold as we speak. In fact, they've cropped that picture exactly where the chair would have no legs, because the legs are made separately. Helmut Batzner's chair, which we call the Bowfinger chair, is the first one-piece, adult-size plastic chair. Does it win? No. It's not injection molded. This is a different method of manufacturing called pre-preg molding. A measured amount of material is forced into a heated mold, which melts the material and then it cures in the mold. So injection molding, the plastic is made liquid and forced in until the mold is full. This is a different method of filling the mold. Batzner has done a beautiful job arriving at a form that solves some of the structural deficiencies of plastic. Plastic has no grain, it's not very strong. So any strength you give it needs to be through engineered shape. If you look at the front leg of the Batzner chair, it's got a reverse curve into the rest of the form of the chair, and at the bottom that's filled out coming towards us again. And the result of that three-dimensionality gives extra strength to the front legs where it would otherwise really struggle to hold a person up. Since 1966, almost 150,000 of these chairs have been made. They only take 5 minutes to mold. And that's a lot of chairs, and that's a fast production time. But there's still a lot of room to improve this, because pre-preg molding is labor intensive, and it's more expensive than a system that can be automated where a mold closes and just has plastic pumped into it. So beautiful as the Bowfinger chair is, we're still on a quest for the Monoblock one-piece plastic chair. Vico Magistretti's Celine chair is also an adult-size, single-material plastic chair. But it is also not injection molded. This chair is made of a 3 millimeter thick Reglar sheet, which is fiberglass reinforced polyester that's sort of clamped into a mold. It's formed into this chair. So because of that material difference, it's really not a monoblock chair. As with Batzner, Magistretti has an interesting solution to the structural weakness of the front legs. He's curved the plastic around into an S shape, which you can see in the lower right-hand corner. So there's a lot more material and structure strengthening those legs. If you've noticed that these are all Italian companies so far, and you might find that curious, but Italian companies were willing to take on the expense and effort of making the molds to experiment to produce these chairs because of the value of craft in Italy and the high level of craftsmanship available to experiment with the plastic and make the molds. There's a humility involved in this exploration where all of the effort and craft and work disappears and a production chair comes out, something that ends up looking like there was no effort or craft involved. And so certainly this would not have happened in America, where we need credit for everything we do to be visible in public. This is the first injection molded monoblock chair. 1 squirt of plastic into a mold and you get a chair. And on top of that, it's a cantilevered chair. So it's ticking lots of boxes. It was designed in 1959, and it was the first chair ever made in one piece from one material without a material transformation like steam bending. This chair also has a big but. It wasn't perfected until 1967, and it wasn't producible until 1970, when it could finally be injection molded. So I don't know if it can count as a 1959 chair. I count it as a 1970 chair, when it was finally worth producing the enormous mold required to produce this chair. Anytime you see one, investigate it, because each version tells a different story through the details. There are different types of plastic and thicknesses of plastic. There are different transitions. The edges are different thicknesses. There are different kinds of ribbing underneath to help strengthen the plastic that wasn't really up to the task of the cantilever. So we think of the Panton chair as one thing visually, but it's been many things in its development. Verner Panton is a designer that many of you will like knowing about. He was one of Denmark's biggest furniture and interior designers. He fought in the resistance in World War II against the Nazis, and he was someone who was clearly not afraid to stand up to authority. This is evident in his resistance work, but even more so in his design work. He produced futuristic work, mostly in colorful plastic. Early in his career, he worked for Arne Jacobsen. And by the 1970s, he was designing entire environments, psychedelic interiors. You could even describe them as seizure-inducing interiors. He wrote, "Most people spend their lives in dreary, beige conformity, mortally afraid of using colors. The main purpose of my work is to provoke people into using their imagination and make their surroundings more exciting." The Panton chair became a total cultural statement. Here it is, co-starring in a Nova magazine feature called How to Undress in Front of Your Husband, and I would argue it isn't co-starring, it's starring. It completely steals the spotlight. Peter Feel, who is co-author of one of the textbooks we're using this semester, wrote, "This is the single most important moment in the history of furniture since the dawn of civilization." I don't know if I would go that far, but you get my point. This chair changed some stuff. What I think is really interesting is that when Panton couldn't get it figured out in plastic, when he designed it in 1959 but it couldn't be made, he went to Tonnet and refocused on doing it in plywood. So here we are with this older laminated veneer technology trying to be some future material, future form, and not quite crossing the finish line, right? Like, I can't even tell you if this is a taco or a potato chip, and it's neither success nor failure. It's merely an interesting stop along the way in the progress of the Panton chair. Panton wrote, "I tried to forget existing examples, even though they may be good, and concern myself above all with material. The result then rarely has 4 legs, not because I do not wish to make such a chair, but because the processing of materials such as wire and polyester calls for new shapes." Panton's living tower is radical aesthetically, but really traditional in terms of how it's made. It's a wooden frame covered with upholstery. In this case, the new addition is polyurethane foam, which arrived in 1954, but wasn't really commercially available until the 1960s, and boy did he make good use of it. I happen to really dislike this aesthetic, but I know that most of my students go completely crazy for it, so I feel like I have to show it. And in searching for more images to share with you, I was surprised to discover that Vitra has a CAD model of this available on their website. I'm not certain what I would use that for, but I thought I'd show it to you anyway. Panton thought the color white was so boring that he said it should be taxed. Anyway, I just thought you should know a little bit more about him, but we need to get back to this chair story. There's the Panton Chair, 1959 to 1967, finally arriving in 1970. And the reason it could be made in the 70s is that by then people had figured out what plastic could do, figured out how to manufacture on a larger scale, figured out how to produce those molds less expensively and more successfully. As a result, the 1970s saw an increase in one-piece plastic designs. And those designs started to travel beyond the more experimental boundaries of Italian manufacturing, but they're still statement pieces more than everyday furniture. A good example is American designer K. Leroy Ruggles' Monobloc Chair, produced by Directional in 1972. Ruggles' career did a deep dive into plastic. After college, he got a job helping design the fiberglass body of the first fiberglass Corvettes. He also invented a molding technique that allowed a one-piece plastic sink and countertop unit that sort of opened the door to rethinking what bathroom surfaces should be. And if that's not enough, he also apparently invented the water slide. His Monobloc shelving is a really clever example of sectional thinking to get around the scale problem with plastic. He produced a series of parts that snapped together that you could make a number of different things out of, including a monumental bookcase. And the patent drawing helps explain the attachment technology, which involves a solid rigid pin insert. This line was not inexpensive. The small table was $96, that's about $600 today. A shelving unit was $250, that's about $1,500 today. And if you just bought one separate shelf for $1,350, that would be about $85 today. It's impossible to know if this would have been more successful in spite of its price, because the oil crisis of 1973 pretty much shut down the era of large plastic objects. All of the explorations about large-scale plastic objects pretty much stopped. The next chair to look at in this pursuit of an entire chair made of plastic in one injection molded squirt, designed for the masses and affordable, is Charles Fury's Integra chair. Harry Siebel produced this chair in Australia and said that it took 3 minutes to make. He claimed he sold more than 3 million by 1981. To my eye, it's kind of a cheapened reimagining of the beautiful Batsner Bowfinger chair, but even that I wouldn't mind if it were readily available and affordable. I also just want to point out that this whole time, there's also progress in the shell design with added legs. We saw plastic seats with legs when we looked at the Eames's work and Robin Day's work with the Polyprop chair, and how the Eames's transitioned from early plastics like fiberglass, which is sheets and resin compressed in a mold, to plastics like polypropylene that's molded as a liquid. And we looked at the different methods of attaching bases to those plastic shells. Even that ends up trickling down to more available options. If we look at how lesser designers took on that exercise, and in this case examine a chair made in Los Angeles instead of Italy, we see a different sort of thing. This chair isn't as elegant as the Eames shell chair, and the method of attaching the base isn't as sophisticated as the Polyprop chair, but there is evidence of really mastering plastics engineering and starting to understand the requirements of wall thickness and added fins and structural integrity out of this grainless material. The Aladdin plastics chair sold for $13, that's about $100 today. So it wasn't really inexpensive, but it was certainly affordable. But no chair we've looked at so far is the game changer that I'm on the hunt for. We want a chair that's one squirt of plastic that everyone can afford, that requires no after molding labor. Are you ready to see it? Here it comes. The beautiful steel mold opens. The ejector arms pull the molded chair out. The worker with cigarette in mouth removes that chair. And there you have the ultimate success of the Monobloc chair. This is the final answer to this quest. It's both accomplishment and tragedy. It's like the Action Office 2. All of the intent and effort and engineering and science and care that went into it was on track, correct, admirable. What we've done with the results is not so. Originally, this chair was relatively expensive. They cost around $60. Now they're as cheap as $3. They are now made all over the world, and they're now also a major part of landfills around the world. Many millions of these chairs have been produced since the early 1980s. Every 70 seconds, a monoblock chair comes out of a single press mold. If you want evidence of the value of this design, look at the underside of the chair in the patent drawing. How much structure had to be added to allow this plastic to be as thin as possible and yet still hold a person up. The company that first produced this chair is a French company, the Groflex company, and their story is an old one. Three French brothers, Auguste, François, and Jean, started a furniture company in 1927, making wooden furniture and housewares. In 1954, the next generation decided to investigate plastic production. Raymond Groflex led the charge and filed multiple patents. Most of them are foreign patents which weren't scanned with their images, so for now I can only show you his American patents. And you would be justified in noticing that the quality of design might not be the primary concern with this furniture. The patent for the chair on the left is from 1959, and it's a chair very much like the ones I just showed you, with a plastic upper and a metal lower. But Raymond was determined to create a monoblock chair. They claim the first one was created in 1981, though the first chair I can find evidence of was 1983. Many years ago, Design Boom had a really lovely article on innovative reuse of broken monoblock chairs. Tragic as these chairs are, they have also provided a pathway to some interesting design solutions. There were pictures in this article of people taking multiple broken chairs and attaching them to become one useful chair. They also profiled some people who had used monoblock chairs as the seat for low-cost, easy-to-manufacture wheelchairs. And none of these counterbalanced the problems with this chair, but I thought it was a really interesting investigation. The article doesn't seem to be available anymore, but if you're interested, maybe the Wayback Machine will find it for you. If you read the article that I shared with you on design history research techniques that I like using, you will already be aware how much I respect the authority of the amateur. People who fall in love with products and do deep dives into understanding them have so much more knowledge about those products than any of us could ever approach. You will never learn about the history of the monoblock chair from the MoMA. There are no books that tell the history of the monoblock chair. But Bryan Ropar has a passion for the monoblock chair, with every single chair ever made categorized, taxonomized, analyzed, assessed, and presented. And it is really thrilling, if this is your interest, as it is mine, to see someone who really knows what they're talking about explain it to you. So if you want to know more about the monoblock chair, I don't think anyone on the planet knows more than Bryan Ropar does. Regardless of how you feel about the monoblock chair, the many people and the multiple technologies and the many years of experimenting that went into creating it opened the door to manufacturing techniques that have really transformed many objects in our world. Lots of designers are able to create large things out of plastic that use that plastic in a more responsible way. And we're able now to continue making high-end design statement chairs like Philippe Starck's Dr. No chair, but we're also able to make more humble, available, everyday products. And really, I just wanted to include this picture to show you that mold because it is so incredibly beautiful. And any of my students who are taking Metals 2, where they're learning how to cut metal on different axes, will see this and marvel at it. So that was a little mini focus on the history of the plastic chair as part of History of ID Week 11, Plastics. Apologize anymore. I don't have to apologize to you. I just realized I'm shouting. I'm yelling. I'm supposed to whisper. I'm supposed to entrance you with an intimate tone, not scream at you. Ruggles had, don't eat peanuts when you're lecturing. Come on, tell me how to say this name. Oh my God. Am I really going to pretend I have the energy to do more of this? Am I really going to fake it? Okay, one more week. One more week. I only have to find enthusiasm for one more week. Ooh. I can have a sip of this. There's peanuts here somewhere. There's peanuts. Where are the peanuts? Where are the peanuts? Peanuts. No. 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 Where are the peanuts? No, where are the peanuts?
I got the peanuts. 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 I got peanuts.
Okay. Okay. Peanuts. Good boy. Have a peanut. Eat a peanut. Have a sip. Scratch your nose. Scratch your head. I gave myself a haircut. Okay, here we go. Chairs.